My name is Maya Richardson, and I grew up watching my parents build their sports nutrition empire from the ground up. Some might think being born into a wealthy family meant a life of luxury and ease, but that couldn't be further from the truth. My parents, especially my father, made sure I understood the value of hard work from day one. I can still remember the first time Dad brought me to the office. I was 7, wearing my favorite blue dress with tiny flowers, trying to look as professional as a second grader could. "Maya," he said, setting me up at a small desk near his office. "One day, all of this might be yours, but you'll have to earn it, just like I did." Those words shaped my entire childhood. While other kids spent their summers by the pool, I was learning about inventory management and customer service. Mom sometimes worried I was missing out on being a kid, but I loved every minute of it. The company, Richardson Nutrition, became my second home. College flew by in a blur of business classes and internships at Dad's company. I worked in every department, starting from the warehouse up, with no special treatment. That was our deal. The employees, who'd known me since childhood, watched with approval as I learned the ropes from the ground up. After graduation, I dove headfirst into my role at the company. My days were packed with meetings, reports, and strategy sessions. Dating? That was a foreign concept. My college roommate, Sarah, used to joke that I was married to my job. Everything changed at the company's annual holiday party. I was running late, as usual, having stayed behind to finish some quarterly reports. When I finally arrived at the venue, the party was in full swing. That's when I saw him, James Cooper, from our Denver branch. Tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, he made the exhaustion of my 14-hour workday melt away. "You must be Maya," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope," I laughed, accepting his handshake. "The best," he replied, "though they didn't mention you were beautiful." That night, we talked for hours about work, family, and our dreams. He seemed to understand me in a way no one else had. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, my heart did a little flip. After James returned to Denver, we started messaging each other constantly. Every morning began with his "good morning, beautiful" text, and every night ended with long conversations about our days. It felt like I'd known him forever. One night, after a particularly long video call, I took a leap. "Why don't you transfer to the main office?" I suggested. "We could be together, and it would be great for your career." There was a pause on his end. "Maya, I can't," he said. "My family's here in Denver. My parents, my sister, my nephew. We're really close. I couldn't leave them." My heart sank a little, but then he added, "But why don't you come here? The Denver branch could use someone with your expertise." I sat with that thought for a day before approaching Dad in his office. "Daddy, I need your advice," I said. "What would you think about me transferring to the Denver branch?" I watched his face carefully as I explained about James. To my surprise, Dad just smiled. "I've been wondering when you'd ask. James has a good reputation in the company, and the Denver branch could use strong leadership. If this is what you want, I'll make it happen." 2 weeks later, I was standing in James's apartment in Denver, surrounded by moving boxes. "Welcome home," he said, wrapping his arms around me. I felt like I was exactly where I should be. The first meeting with his family came sooner than I expected. They all lived together in a modest 2-story house: his parents, Tom and Linda, his sister Rachel, and her teenage son, Kyle. I was nervous as we pulled up to their house. "Your family must have a mansion," Linda said the moment I walked in. "This must seem so simple to you." I felt my cheeks flush. "Oh no, not at all," I replied. "We've always lived pretty normally. No mansions or private jets, just a regular house." "But surely, with your family's wealth—" Tom started. "I've worked for everything since I was a kid," I explained. "Dad believed in earning your way. I'm more comfortable with simple things, honestly." I caught the disappointed looks they exchanged, but tried to ignore them. Rachel, James's sister, just looked me up and down, eyeing my simple sweater and jeans. "If I had your money, I wouldn't be caught dead in anything but designer labels," she said with a smirk. I just shrugged, not knowing how to respond. James squeezed my hand under the table but said nothing to defend me. 2 months later, James proposed during a walk in the park. It wasn't elaborate, just us, a simple ring and a heartfelt question. I said yes immediately. When it came to wedding planning, we had our first real disagreement. James wanted something extravagant, a huge venue, hundreds of guests, all the trimmings. "Babe, we don't need all that," I argued. "Let's do something small and meaningful." He eventually gave in, though not happily. We had a modest ceremony with just immediate family present, but I couldn't help overhearing Linda during the reception whispering to her sister, I expected something much grander from someone with her background. All this, it's so plain. I pretended not to hear, but their words stung more than I wanted to admit. The ink had barely dried on our marriage certificate when the questions about housing started. We were having Sunday dinner at Tom and Linda's when they brought it up. It was a typical family gathering. Rachel texting on her phone, Kyle playing video games in the corner, and Tom watching sports on TV while we ate. "So, Maya," Linda said, passing the mashed potatoes, "have you talked to your father about buying you two a house? Something in the Cherry Creek area would be perfect." "I was just looking at listings there yesterday. There's this beautiful 5-bedroom with a pool." I nearly choked on my water. "Actually, we're planning to save up and buy our own place," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's fork stopped midway to her mouth. Tom muted the TV and turned to stare at me. Linda's face froze in that artificial smile I was beginning to recognize all too well. They exchanged loaded glances that made me feel like I'd said something terribly wrong. "But surely your father wouldn't mind," Tom started, wiping his mouth with his napkin. "I mean, it's just natural for parents to help their children get started, especially when they're so capable." I cut him off, firmly but politely, sitting up straighter in my chair. "James and I want to do this on our own. We're both working, and we can save up. I believe in earning what you have." James reached for my hand under the table, his palm slightly sweaty. "I support Maya on this," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Besides, my apartment is perfectly fine for now. I've been renting it for years, and it's in a great location." Linda's eyes lit up suddenly, like she'd just had a brilliant idea. She set down her wine glass with a little too much force. "Well, if you're staying in the apartment, Maya should pay the rent. After all, she makes quite a bit more than you do, James. It's only fair." I watched as my husband nodded in agreement, a little too quickly for my comfort. "That makes sense," he said, not meeting my eyes. "It's $3,000 a month." The amount took me by surprise. Denver wasn't cheap, but that seemed high for our neighborhood. Still, I didn't want to create waves. The tension in the room was already thick enough to cut with a knife. "Sure, that's fair," I said, trying to keep my voice light. So our routine was established. Every month, I'd give James $3,000 and he'd handle the rent payment. Sometimes I'd see him making the transfer on his phone, always quick to close the screen if I walked by. It went on like this for a while until one day, a thought occurred to me while I was reviewing our monthly expenses. "Hey," I said one evening while we were having dinner in our kitchen, the sounds of the city drifting in through the open window. "Since I'm paying the rent now, maybe I should take over the lease. We could put it in my name. It would make sense for tax purposes." James's reaction was immediate and strange. He tensed up, nearly dropping his fork onto his half-eaten pasta. His face paled slightly. "No, that wouldn't work," he said quickly, his voice higher than usual. "I've been renting from Mr. Johnson for years. He trusts me. We don't want to mess with a good thing." Something about his reaction bothered me deeply, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, the slight tremor in his hands as he reached for his water glass. But I pushed the feeling aside, like I'd been doing with so many little things lately. Life in Denver had fallen into a routine. I was settling into my role at the branch office, managing my team and having weekly video calls with Mom and Dad. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, but there was one issue that kept gnawing at me. It happened for the first time on a Tuesday. I came home from work early with a headache, only to find Linda and Rachel sitting on my couch watching my TV, eating the expensive salmon I'd bought for James's birthday dinner. "Oh, Maya," Linda said, not even getting up. "We were just having a little snack." I stood there, key still in hand, staring at them. They had their shoes up on my coffee table, magazines scattered everywhere, and my kitchen looked like a tornado had hit it. This became a regular occurrence. I'd come home to find them there, or worse, come home to evidence they'd been there. Empty food containers, things moved around, my closet clearly rifled through. They had keys, of course they had keys. One evening, I tried talking to James about it. "Honey, don't you think it's a bit strange that your mom and sister just come in whenever they want?" He barely looked up from his phone. "They're family, Maya. You're being dramatic. Just calm down." But I couldn't calm down, not when I found them going through my personal papers one afternoon, giggling over my diary from college that they'd discovered in a box I hadn't unpacked yet. "We need to talk," I said firmly, my hand shaking slightly. "This isn't okay. You can't just come into our home without asking. You can't go through our things." Linda's face crumpled instantly, tears sprang to her eyes like someone had turned on a faucet. "How dare you?" she wailed. "After everything we've done to welcome you into our family, I knew you were too good for us with your fancy background." As if on cue, James walked in. He took in the scene, his mother sobbing, Rachel glaring at me, and me standing there in shock. "What did you do?" he demanded, rushing to his mother's side. "She's trying to keep us away from you," Linda cried into his shoulder. "She says we're not welcome here anymore. That's not what I started, but James cut me off. "How could you treat them like this? They're my family." After they left, James turned on me, his face hard in a way I'd never seen before. "You need to fix this," he said. "Buy them something nice, really nice, and apologize." The next day, I went shopping after work. I bought Linda a designer handbag she'd been hinting about, and Rachel a pair of expensive boots. My hands felt dirty as I wrapped them. When I delivered the gifts to their house, they accepted them with smug smiles. "We knew you'd come around," Linda said, not even looking at me as she examined the handbag. "These will do," Rachel added, trying on the boots. That night, James finally spoke to me again. "See, was that so hard?" he asked, kissing my cheek. But something had changed, something I couldn't quite put my finger on yet. After the boundary incident, things got worse in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Linda and Rachel turned gift demanding into an art form. Every minor holiday became an occasion for expectations. "Maya, you know it's National Sisters' Day next week," Rachel would text. "I saw this beautiful Gucci bag. It's the anniversary of when I first held James as a baby," Linda would announce. "I think a spa weekend would be appropriate to mark the occasion." The requests were endless: Mother's Day, birthdays, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, Labor Day, Memorial Day. Even Groundhog Day became an excuse. When I hesitated about buying Linda a $500 scarf for Arbor Day, she burst into tears during family dinner. "I guess some people just don't understand family loyalty," she sniffled, while Rachel patted her back. "Even after we've welcomed her so warmly." "Maya," James said later that night, "why do you have to be so difficult? They're your family now, too." "But James, don't you think this is getting out of hand?" "Last week, your mom wanted a designer watch because it was National Ice Cream Day." He just shrugged. "If you can afford it, why not help family?" As if the situation wasn't stressful enough, Kyle, Rachel's 15-year-old son, started showing up at our apartment more frequently. At first, I tried to be understanding. All teenagers go through difficult phases, right? But Kyle took teenage attitude to new heights. One evening, I spent hours making my grandmother's special lasagna recipe. Kyle took one bite and pushed the plate away. "This is garbage," he declared. "Mom says you probably can't cook because you grew up with servants doing everything for you." I gripped my fork tighter. "Kyle, that's not appropriate." "Whatever," he cut me off. "I need $60 for the movies with my friends." When I refused, he kicked the kitchen chair. "You're loaded. Stop being such a miser. Mom says you're just playing poor to feel superior." That night, I tried talking to James about Kyle's behavior. We were getting ready for bed, and I was hoping he'd finally see reason. "Honey, Kyle was really disrespectful today. Could you maybe talk to him?" James didn't even look up from his phone. "You need to handle it yourself. Think of it as practice. We have our own kids someday. You need to learn how to deal with these situations." The next day, Kyle showed up again, loudly demanding money for a new video game. When I said no, he sprawled across our couch, turned the TV volume up to maximum, and started making pointed comments about fake humble rich people. I looked at my husband, hoping for support, but he just walked out of the room, leaving me alone with his smirking nephew. In that moment, standing in my own living room while a teenager openly disrespected me, I felt more alone than I ever had before. 2 years. It's amazing how much can change in 2 years, or maybe how much you can convince yourself that things will get better if you just try hard enough, be patient enough, give enough. "I'm going to visit Mom and Dad this weekend," I told James over breakfast one morning. "Want to come?" He barely glanced up from his phone. "Can't." Promised Mom and Dad I'd help them with some stuff around the house. The drive to my parents' house was peaceful. Mom made my favorite lasagna, Dad told his terrible dad jokes, and for a few hours, I felt like myself again, like the Maya who used to know exactly who she was and what she wanted. But life has a way of shattering peace into a million pieces. When I opened the door to our apartment Sunday evening, the stench hit me first: stale beer, pizza, and something worse. Empty cans littered every surface. Cigarette butts floated in half-empty Solo cups, and pizza boxes made a greasy tower on my coffee table. There, sprawled across my living room like they owned it, were Kyle and 5 other teenagers, passed out among the wreckage of what had clearly been one hell of a party. "Get up!" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. "All of you out now!" The teenagers startled awake, scrambling to gather their things. all except Kyle, who stretched lazily and looked at me with that familiar smirk. Why should I leave? I live here now. I felt my blood pressure rising. Excuse me? Had a fight with Mom and Grandma, he said, reaching for a half-empty beer can. Decided this was better than their rules. Uncle James said I could crash here. We rent this apartment, I said through gritted teeth. Give me your keys now. Kyle laughed. Actually laughed. Rent this apartment? That's funny. This is Uncle James's apartment. Has been since great-grandpa left it to him. The room started spinning. What are you talking about? The apartment, it's his. Always has been. Got it when great-grandpa died 5 years ago. Everyone knows that. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 2 years of rent payments. Every time I'd suggested putting the lease in my name, every time he dodged the question, every time he'd quickly hidden his phone when making the rent transfer, it had all been a lie. I must have looked like I was about to collapse because Kyle's whole demeanor changed. The cocky teenager disappeared, replaced by someone who looked almost sympathetic. Look, he said awkwardly, patting my shoulder, there's something else you should know. He pulled out his phone, fidgeting with it. I've been recording some of their conversations. Started doing it when they were talking about me, but, well, they talk about you a lot, too. James's laugh came through the speaker first. That laugh I used to love. It's perfect, he was saying. $3,000 a month straight into my pocket. She doesn't even question it. My stomach churned as Kyle played recording after recording, each one worse than the last. Keep talking about family loyalty, Rachel was saying. She'll cave every time. Got a new Prada bag out of her last week. Just make sure you get her pregnant soon. Linda's voice again. Once there's a baby, her daddy will have to buy you two a house. No way he'll let his grandchild live in an apartment. But the worst was yet to come. Kyle hesitated before playing the next one. She's such an idiot, James's voice, slightly slurred. Can't even satisfy me in bed. Thank God for Amanda and Julie and... what's her name from accounting? Just be careful, honey, Linda again. Don't let Maya catch you, at least not until we've squeezed every penny we can out of her. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Kyle caught it. Could you... My voice cracked. Could you send those to me? He nodded, quickly tapping on his phone. I heard the notification sounds on mine as the files came through. Kyle stood up, gathering his things. At the door, he turned back. I'm sorry, he said quietly. They're all snakes, you know. Always have been. Even Mom. He shrugged. Guess that's why they hate me so much. I can't pretend like they do. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in the trashed apartment, alone with the truth about my marriage, about my husband, about the past 2 years of my life. I didn't bother cleaning up the mess in the apartment. Let it be a perfect metaphor for my marriage, a beautiful facade hiding absolute garbage underneath. Instead, I got in my car and drove straight to Linda and Tom's house, where I knew they'd all be having their Sunday family dinner. They were all there, exactly as I'd pictured them. James, Linda, Tom, and Rachel gathered around the dining table like some Norman Rockwell painting of family unity. The scene made me sick. Maya! Linda's fake smile appeared instantly. We weren't expecting you. How was your parents' house? I ignored her completely, fixing my eyes on James. Show me the rental agreement for our apartment. The room went silent. James's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What? The rental agreement, the lease. Show it to me. He recovered quickly, plastering on that charming smile I'd once loved. Oh, honey, you know Mr. Johnson doesn't do formal contracts. We've known each other for years. Mr. Johnson doesn't exist. I cut him off. The apartment belongs to you. Always has. Linda jumped in quickly, her voice high and nervous. Maya, dear, would you like some pot roast? I tried that recipe you mentioned. Shut up, Linda, I said, my voice ice cold. They all stared at me in shock. I'd never spoken to any of them like that before. James, what have you been doing with my $3,000 every month for the past 2 years? He chuckled, but I could see sweat breaking out on his forehead. Come on, Maya, it's not a big deal, so I own the apartment. What difference does it make? We're married. What difference? I pulled out my phone. Let's see what difference it makes. The color drained from their faces as James's voice filled the room. It's perfect. $3,000 a month, straight into my pocket. She doesn't even question it. I played recording after recording, their own voices condemning them. The plotting, the manipulation, the mockery, James's boasts about his mistresses, Linda and Rachel's schemes for extracting gifts, their plans for getting me pregnant to secure more money from my father. When I finally stopped the playback, you could have heard a pin drop. James was ghost white. Rachel looked like she might throw up. Linda's carefully maintained makeup couldn't hide her terror. I'm divorcing you, I said to James, my voice steady. Expect the papers this week. If you try to contact me for anything other than the divorce proceedings, these recordings go public. I'm sure the business community would love to hear how you scammed your wife out of $72,000. I turned and walked out, their protests falling on deaf ears. I drove back to the apartment, his apartment, and packed my things methodically, efficiently. By sunset, my car was loaded, and I was on my way to my parents' house. Mom and Dad were still up when I arrived. One look at my face, and they knew something was terribly wrong. I told them everything, showing them the recordings. Dad's face grew darker with each revelation. I'll handle this, he said when I finished, and he did. James was fired the next day, and Dad made sure his reputation in the business world was thoroughly destroyed. The divorce proceedings were quick. James tried to fight it at first, but the recordings changed everything. The judge was particularly interested in the financial fraud aspect. James walked away with nothing but his apartment and his ruined reputation. 3 months later, I was back at headquarters, throwing myself into work, slowly rebuilding my life. That's when I got a text from Kyle. We met for coffee. He looked different, more mature, less angry. I got a job at the car wash, he told me. Moved out of Mom's house after they found out I was the one who gave you the recordings. Best decision I ever made. I could help you, I offered. Get you a position at the company. He shook his head, smiling slightly. Thanks, but I need to do this on my own. Clean slate, you know. Besides, I'm saving up for community college. I understood completely. Sometimes the only way forward is to leave everything behind and build something new, something true, from the ground up. That night, I stood in my new apartment, my actual rental, with a real lease in my name, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same person who fell for James's charm 2 years ago. She was stronger, wiser, and finally, genuinely free. I picked up my phone and deleted their numbers one by one. The last light of day caught the diamond on my ring finger, my grandmother's ring now, not the one James had given me, and scattered into 1,000 points of light. Outside my window, the city was coming alive with evening energy, full of possibilities and new beginnings. I was ready for mine.